So how's this for a statistic? 22% of the launch titles for the Nintendo 3DS were published by Ubisoft. In fact, Ubisoft had more 3DS launch titles on store shelves than Nintendo themselves. I guess you could call that overachieving, provided you prefer quantity over quality, and if that's the case, you might say Ubisoft is hot off the 3DS starting line. But if you prefer your games not to suck, you might say they've blown a tire. And in no game is Ubisoft's tire flatter than this one. This is Asphalt 3D. Emphasis on the first syllable. Usually we say something positive when we go over the roots and history of a series, but since its debut on the original Nintendo DS, it's been kind of a bumpy ride for the Asphalt franchise. The games have never been received very well by critics, and I think that's partly because they're so unoriginal. I mean, if Need for Speed and Burnout just crashed into each other at cataclysmic speeds, you could basically pull Asphalt from the fiery rubble. Of course, the other problem has been that the games just aren't very good, and even in 3 dimensions, that's again the case with Asphalt 3D. Actually, Asphalt 3D is less a brand new game than it is a collection of recycled content. The tracks and cars are actually pulled from an iOS version of Asphalt, an unfortunate trend in early 3DS development. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with ports, but there's a huge difference between console ports and mobile iOS ports. Asphalt costs a couple bucks on your iPhone. It costs you $40 on your 3DS. There are plenty of reasons why this ride isn't worth the price of admission, but let's start with the graphics, because not only are they aesthetically unappealing, but they're also functionally poor. In addition to the game's chugging frame rate, it's almost impossible to see oncoming cars until they're slamming into your BMW. Those BMWs look good thanks to decent car models, but in a world this ugly and nondescript, even gorgeous cars just aren't that much fun to look at. Now, that kind of visual blurriness applies to your environments too. All too often, you're crashing into things you just couldn't see, even with the 3D effect turned on. And speaking of which, Asphalt 3D is one of the poorest examples of its implementation in any of the launch titles. It does add a little depth, but frankly, it's really unimpressive. Fortunately, there is a lot of content in Asphalt 3D, regardless of its newness. You're given 42 licensed vehicles to unlock, 17 tracks to race. The game even supports up to 6 players for local multiplayer. There are no online modes, but the game does support the 3DS StreetPass feature, which allows you to compare race times with people you pass throughout the day. Like on foot. So amount of content certainly isn't the problem in Asphalt 3D, it's just everything else. When the controls are this stiff, the gameplay is this undistinguished, and the graphics are this functionally flawed, you don't have much of a reason to call shotgun. If you're looking for a racing game in the 3DS launch library, Asphalt 3D is one to leave in the dust.